And then they come back to us and they're like, there are like 50 million people named Khalid al-Masri. This is not the guy you're looking for. And they release him. But when he comes out of Egypt, he's got a beard down to his waist. He's holding a copy of the Quran. And he told a reporter all he wants to do now is kill Americans. Because that's what we did to him.
Right.
We do this kind of thing all the time.
Well, didn't we sort of create bin Laden's ideology against America?
I'm glad that you put it that way. The answer to that question is yes, we did. We didn't create bin Laden. There's this misconception that bin Laden was one of the Afghan mujahideen that we had funded during the war against the Soviets.
Right.
He wasn't. He didn't arrive in Afghanistan until after the Soviets had departed. But in terms of that ideology, absolutely, yes, we created that group. What we did is we had such an obsession with communism well into the late 80s that it was, the policy was to defeat the Russians at all costs.
Right.
And one of the things that we did to defeat the Russians was to provide Stinger missiles to the Afghan mujahideen. And it was the missile that turned the war around. Because all of a sudden, from a shoulder launcher, you can take down a Russian plane, a Russian helicopter. We just decimated the Russian military that way. And what we did is we radicalized these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Russians are gone. And they're still radical. And then what do? Then we have September 11th.
Right. Jesus. Do you think that, obviously, I know your stance on, all of these fucking torture techniques that we used to use, like waterboarding and all of these things. But do you think that waterboarding has ever been an effective technique?
No.
Never.
Never. It's meant to punish, not to collect information. I'll tell you, you know how I feel about the FBI. It's hard for me to compliment the FBI. But if there's one thing that the FBI is good at, it's interrogation. They've been doing it since the Nuremberg trials in 45 and 46. And what they do, it's not sexy and it's not something you see in the movies, but they establish a rapport with a subject. They're kind to the subject. Mm-hmm. Instead of beating him and electrocuting him and, throwing ice water on him, they offer him a cigarette or an orange or a date or, paper to write to his parents or whatever. And over the course of time, and usually it's only a few weeks, the subject will open up and provide information. See, and this is the postscript to the Abu Zubaydah capture story. Abu Zubaydah was sent to the secret site. And because, I'm going to say it for the third time, because 9/11 was an open criminal investigation, primacy was given to the FBI. That drove the CIA crazy. We wanted primacy. This was our operation. But the FBI, specifically an FBI agent by the name of Ali Soufan, began to interrogate Abu Zubaydah. And what he did is we waited until he was recovered from the gunshots. And Ali sat across a table from him and talked. And like I say, he'd offer him a cigarette, offer him an apple or a cup of tea or something. And over the course of weeks, Abu Zubaydah began to speak. Now, Abu Zubaydah told us two things that were absolutely critically important. Number one, we didn't have any idea what the Al-Qaeda wiring diagram looked like. No idea. We knew bin Laden was the boss and Zawahiri was the underboss, for lack of a better term. And that was it. We didn't know anything else. We knew that there's Al-Qaeda, in Rome, there's Al-Qaeda in Jakarta, Al-Qaeda in Mexico City, but we didn't know who or how they reported back to bin Laden. We didn't know anything. So Ali said, and I'm just going to use this as an example, if you're going to do an attack in Dusseldorf, how would you do that? And Abu Zubaydah said, well, I know this guy, Mohammed, and here's his phone number. He's in Dusseldorf, and Mohammed's got a friend, Abdullah, and here's Abdullah's phone number. Abdullah has access to weapons. And I was talking to Abdullah one time, and he told me about this guy, Rashid, and here's Rashid's number. And Rashid knows explosives. He can build bombs. So we can call the Germans and say, hey, you have a problem in Dusseldorf, and here are the guys you need to raid. And then they raid the apartments and they grab these guys. So we didn't know any of that stuff until Abu Zubaydah started telling Ali Soufan.
Wow.
The other thing that Abu Zubaydah told us about, and this was one of the most important things that we learned through the course of the so-called War on Terror. We knew that there was a very bad guy out there who went by the nom de guerre Mukhtar, right? We knew this was a bad, bad guy who in 1996 had conceptualized this operation called the Bojinka Plan. Have you ever heard of Bojinka?
No.
So this was a plan to hijack 14 747s leaving from Manila Airport and fly all 14 of them into buildings up and down the west coast of the United States. It was accidentally broken up by the Philippine police. And all we knew was that the mastermind was this guy Mukhtar, and he had escaped. So we knew, I mean, this was a teaching point at the CIA. Like, we really lucked out with this one because we didn't know anything about it, but the Filipino police stumbled on it. The guy got away, but here's the plan. We know that Al-Qaeda is going to use airliners as weapons, right? So we knew that in 1996. They wanted to use planes as weapons. Mm-hmm. But we didn't know who Mukhtar was. So Ali's like, you keep talking about this Mukhtar. Who is he? And Abu Zubaydah smiles and he said, you don't know Mukhtar? And he said, well, we know that there is a guy, Mukhtar, and that he's a bad guy. He's the operational leader of Al-Qaeda. And he said, sure, who is he? He goes, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. We never heard that name before. We didn't have any idea who Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was. But you know what? 2 months later, he's in custody. And what we did when we captured him in an Al-Qaeda safe house in Rawalpindi. We walked him past Abu Zubaydah's cell so that they could see each other. And Abu Zubaydah immediately burst into tears.
Why did he burst into tears?
Because he was a true believer. And it was his information that allowed us to capture Khalid Sheikh Mohammed.
Wow.
He ratted him out.
Wow. That's so fucking wild. So fucking wild. Let's go back. Let's jump forward in time. Mm-hmm. When you originally went on, what was it, ABC?
Yeah.
And you spoke out against the torture program. Mm-hmm. What was like the sequence of events to you going from there to being actually prosecuted and getting sent to prison?
Right. So, I wish I could say that my intention that day was purely patriotic. It actually wasn't. I got a call from Brian Ross at ABC News, and he said that he had a source who said that I had tortured Abu Zubaydah. I said that was absolutely untrue. I said I was the only person who was kind to Abu Zubaydah. I've never laid a hand on Abu Zubaydah or on any other prisoner. I said, your source is either mistaken or he's a liar. Well, he says, you're welcome to come on the show and defend yourself, which I had never spoken to a journalist before. I didn't know that was an old reporter's trick.
Oh, he was just lying.
He said that that's what he had heard.
So he did have a real source?
Yeah. So I said, I'll think about it. Well, a couple of days later, the president's giving a press conference, and one of the reporters asked him about torture. What about these reports that the CIA is torturing people? And he looks in the camera and he says, we do not torture, like that. And
is this Bush?
Bush. I was sitting on the couch watching this with my wife, and I looked at her and I said, he is a bald-faced liar. He's looking the American people in the eye and he's lying to us. couple of days after that, it's a Friday, and he's walking from the south portico of the White House to the helicopter to go to Camp David, and a reporter shouts a question about torture again. And he stops and he turns and he says, well, if there is torture, it's a rogue CIA officer. And I looked at my wife and I said, they're going to try to pin this on me because they were mad that I was the only one who spoke out. They're going to pin this on me.
Oh, this is after you went on ABC, he said this?
No, this is
Before?
2 days before.
Oh, okay. So the guy from ABC called you, the journalist called you, said this, and then you saw the president say this on TV.
So I realized Brian Ross was telling me the truth, that he did have a source who said that I had tortured Abu Zubaydah, because that was the plan. They were going to say, look, everybody knows that we're torturing prisoners. Let's pin it on this asshole. He's the one who would never shut up about it. So I said to my wife,
You were the humanitarian.
I was the human rights guy.
Oh, my God.
Mm-hmm. So I called Brian Ross. I said, I'll give you your interview. And I decided in the days leading up to that interview that whatever he asked me, I was going to tell the truth. And so I said 3 things in that interview that just completely changed the course of the rest of my life. I said that the CIA was torturing its prisoners. I said that torture was official U.S. government policy. It was not the result of a rogue. And I said that the policy had been personally approved by the president himself. The president's a liar. And so, as you can imagine, within 24 hours, the CIA filed what's called a crimes report against me with the Justice Department, saying that I had revealed classified information. My attorney, I hired an attorney, of course, and my attorney said,
You had him on speed dial the second you walked out of that studio.
Boy, did I. You can't classify a crime. So...
You can't classify a crime.
Yeah. They said he released classified information. Torture's illegal. And so by virtue of its illegality, it's unclassified.
Yeah, but is it illegal if it's not in our country?
It's
How
illegal.
do you define if it's illegal if it's in a
law,
black site?
No, the law is crystal clear. It can't be done by an American or any person acting on behalf of an American.
That's what the law says.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So the FBI investigated me for a year, from December of 2007 until December of 2008. And in December of 2008, they sent my lawyer a letter called a declination letter saying that they were declining to prosecute me. And then one of the FBI agents said, this was the worst kept secret in Washington. Everybody knew the CIA was torturing its prisoners. Like, everybody at the FBI talked about it. And when they started torturing Abu Zubaydah, every FBI officer at the secret site left the country. They didn't even want to be in the same country while it was happening. That's how wrong they knew it was. So they dropped the charges. My wife and I went out to dinner that night to celebrate. 3 weeks later, Barack Obama becomes president. And John Brennan becomes, well, first he was named CIA director, but then they withdrew the nomination. He became the Deputy National Security Advisor for Counterterrorism. Well, John and I have always hated each other. And he was one of the founders of the torture program. So Barack Obama becomes president January the 20th, 2009. John Brennan asks the Justice Department to secretly reopen the case against me. And they investigated me for 3 more years until January of 2012. I had no idea that my phones were tapped. I had no idea that my emails were being intercepted. I had no idea that it was being followed by teams of FBI agents. And then on January 12th, 2012, I was arrested, charged with 3 counts of espionage, 1 count of violating the, what was it called? The Intelligence Identities Protection Act of 1982. And 1 count of making a false statement. We were never clear on what the false statement was supposed to have been. In the end, I hadn't committed espionage, just like Tom Drake hadn't committed espionage, and Ed Snowden hasn't committed espionage, and Julian Assange hasn't committed espionage. So in my case, they dropped all 3 of those charges. I took a plea to violating the Intelligence Identities Protection Act, and they dropped the false statements charge. So I had been facing 45 years in prison, and I ended up getting 23 months.
Wow.
And I'll tell you, I turned down the 23 months. They made their best and final offer, right? 30 months, you do 23. My wife and I stayed up literally all night talking about what we should do. And I'm like, I'm innocent. I can't take a plea to something that I didn't do. And I had this idea that, once I get in front of a jury, they're going to realize how ridiculous this is. They're going to realize that I was targeted because of my position on human rights. And so I emailed my lawyers. It was 6 o'clock in the morning. And I said, we've been up all night. We decided I'm going to turn down the best and final. One of the attorneys calls me back immediately. And he says, put on a pot of coffee. We're on our way over. So I had 11 lawyers. So 3 of them come. And I mean, these are like A-list, nationally known, the greatest criminal defense attorneys in Washington, $1,000 an hour 10 years ago. So they get to the house, and they each had sort of different roles. One was sort of the day-to-day guy. One was this Southern gentleman in the $2,000 suit who was nice to everybody. And then one was just an ass kicker, right? And I liked and trusted him the most. So they're saying, look, John, you're making a big mistake here. And I said, I'm innocent. Well, be that as it may, you really should think about this deal. And then the ass kicker pulls me aside. He gets right in my face and he says, you know what your problem is? Your problem is you think this is about justice, and it's not about justice. It's about mitigating damage. Take the fucking deal. And I thought, see, he knows better than I do. I can't win. My best friend's wife, keep this, it's linear. My best friend's wife has an uncle who was O.J. Simpson's jury consultant. And it wasn't just O.J. He did Patrick Michael Smith, whatever his name was, the Kennedy kid that got charged with rape. He did George Zimmerman. He does all these big cases. So because he's the uncle of my best friend's wife, he agreed to help me for free. So we get him top secret security clearance from Justice. He comes up, he reads all 15,000 pages of classified documents in my case. We had this big meeting. I couldn't even meet with my attorneys at their office. We had to meet at the Justice Department's conference room because it was classified.
Wow.
Yeah, awful. So he said to me, look, if we were in any other district in America, I'd say, let's go for it. We're going to win. But the Eastern District of Virginia, the espionage court, your jury is going to be made up of people from the CIA, the Pentagon, the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and a dozen different intelligence contractors. You don't have a prayer. Take the deal. So I took the deal. I said to the lead attorney afterwards, if I hadn't taken the deal, realistically, what was I looking at? And he said 12 to 18 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fuck, man.
It's a joke that everybody in prison is innocent. One of the things that I learned is there are a lot of innocent people in prison.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. A lot.
Yeah, that's one of the big things about, I've had a couple lawyers on here, or one, in fact, a friend of mine who's a lawyer who represents a lot of people that go on death row. And he said one of the biggest issues, the biggest problems with death row, regardless of what your moral stance is on it, is that they get it wrong a lot.
A lot. Yes. It's been proven.
Yeah.
Like how many hundreds of people have been exonerated thanks to DNA evidence.
Right. It's fucking unbelievable how often it happens.
This lead attorney that I told you about, the mean one, he's so rich and has been an attorney for so long that he doesn't anymore take like new cases. He has people working for him that do that. What he does is he only does death penalty appeals. That's it.
Really?
Because he said he wants to, public service and give back and all this stuff. He's done 13 death penalty appeals and he's won all 13 of them. You should see his office.
What's his name?
Mark McDougall.
Mark McDougall.
Guy's a giant. You go into his office.
Sounds like a really good attorney.
Yeah, really, really great attorney at Aiken Gump and Strauss, one of the most important law firms in the world.
Wow.
You go into his office, and it's like a museum of awards from every civil liberties organization in America. From the NAACP to the Brennan Center for Justice, and
That's incredible.
for all these appeals that he's won. The guy's a genius.
What was it like being a guy like yourself who's been overseas, seen all this stuff, been in these gunfights, captured terrorists, and then going into prison? Like, what was that like for you in the beginning, and then how did you adapt?
It was so shocking. I actually wrote a book about it that won 2 literary awards. I wrote Doing Time Like a Spy, How the CIA Taught Me to Survive and Thrive in Prison. At sentencing, my attorneys asked the judge to send me to a minimum security work camp. Minimum security, there are no bars on the windows. They don't lock the door. You're free to come and go as you please. You're on your honor not to abscond. Most everybody works in town. There's a little college in town. And so the prosecution had no objection. So she, orders that I go to minimum security work camp. And the funny thing is, too, you see on Law and Order, for example, when somebody's guilty, right there in the courtroom, they take them away in cuffs, and that's not how they do. I mean, they if you're a really bad guy, they do. But what they do is they say, okay, you're going to get a letter from the Bureau of Prisons, and the letter's going to tell you the day and the time that you have to turn yourself in. So they sent me a letter, and they said, come to the prison on February 28th, no later than 11 a.m., and turn yourself in. So I get in the car with 2 of my attorneys, my cousin, his son, and a documentary film crew. And we drive up to the prison. And it's weird. You just knock on the door. And you're like, hi, I'm John Kiriakou. I'm here to turn myself in. And the guy's like, I went to the camp. And the guy's like, you got to go across the street to the prison. They process you there, and then they walk you back over here. I said, okay. So I go across the street to the actual prison.
It's got to be so hard.
You're in shock. So it's like your brain won't even really process it. You're doing it, but you're not processing it. You're not thinking about it.
Like,
really.
maybe we should go get some McDonald's first.
We did that.
Did you?
Yeah. I said, let's go to McDonald's. It'll be my
That's
last
so funny.
McDonald's.
That's what I just randomly thought of.
Yeah. We all went to McDonald's. And so I go to the prison across the street. Camps are always across the street from a higher security prison or a penitentiary. So when there's a riot, the guys at the camp can go across to the prison and do the cooking and the laundry and the mopping while everybody's on lockdown, right? So I go across the street to the prison. I said, I'm John Kiriakou, here to turn myself in. The guy's like, okay, just walk through the metal detector. And I walk through the metal detector. And then he said, okay, let's go. We walk out, and instead of going across the street to the camp, he starts leading me around to the back of the prison. And I said, no, I'm supposed to be at the camp across the street. And he goes, not according to my paperwork, you're not. And I said, what do you mean? He said, you're going to prison, my friend. Like with the guard towers and the
razor wire.
Yeah. The double fences and the razor wire. And I told myself, take it easy. There's nothing you can do. If you raise a stink, they're going to put you in solitary. So I didn't say anything. So he takes me to this processing area. And they give you a uniform and a sheet and a pillow and a roll of toilet paper and a bath towel, right? Mm-hmm. This little stack of stuff.
Right.
And they take your picture for a badge, and the guy just says, follow me. I'm sitting there for 40 minutes. Finally, the guy just says, follow me. And he takes me to a cell, and he says, that bunk's yours. And then as he's walking out, he turns around and he says, by the way, if anybody walks into your cell uninvited, that's an act of aggression. And he walks away. I'm like, what the fuck is that supposed to mean? I've been here 40 minutes, now I'm going to get my ass kicked. Right? So I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking, you have lived in far worse places than Loretto, Pennsylvania. Right? Like, there's nobody in this prison. more dangerous than the people I've been working with. And I'm including my former colleagues in that. So I thought, you're trained for this. You can handle this. Just do what the CIA trained you to do. Sure enough, 2 guys walk in. Just walk in. And I jumped up out of my seat and I put my fist up and I go, what the fuck do you want? Right? I'm trying to be as tough as I can. One of them says, take it easy. Now, the one had this enormous swastika tattooed on his neck. It took up the entire front of his neck, right?
Wow.
And the other one had fuck you tattooed on his eyelids. So every time he blinked, it said fuck you. So I'm standing there with my fists up. He goes, are you the new guy? And I go, yeah. And he goes, are you a fag? And I go, no. He goes, are you a rat? And I said, no, I'm not a rat. I didn't have anybody else in my case. And he goes, are you a chomo? I go, I don't know what that word means. He goes, chomo, child molester. I go, no, I'm not a fucking child molester. And he goes, okay, you can sit with the Aryans in the cafeteria. And I go, oh, okay, thanks. And I'm thinking, okay, so I'm with the Aryans now. Great. So they walk out. Not too long after, this black guy walks in. And I mean, this guy was just 200 pounds of knotted, rippling muscle, right? And he's holding a newspaper. So he walks in, and he's huge. He walks in, and I jump up again. I go, what do you want? And he goes, take it easy. And very gently, he hands me the paper. And it's the Nation of Islam newspaper. And, you know, in prison, the Nation of Islam isn't a religion so much as it's a gang, right? There's an article about me on the front of this newspaper. And Louis Farrakhan, of all friggin' people, calls me a hero of the Muslim people for standing up for Muslim human rights. So he says, I just wanted to tell you, you're not going to have any trouble with us. And I said, okay, appreciate it. So he walks away. It turned out that 4 of my 5 cellmates were members of Mexican drug cartels, like all of them. Norteños, Borrachos, Mexican Mafia. I mean, these were bad dudes. One of them says to me one day, are you educated? And I said, yeah. He said, could you write my appeal? I said, I'm not a lawyer. He goes, yeah, but you said you're educated. I said, yeah, sure. I'll write your appeal. How hard could it be? Half the lawyers I know are, dopes anyway.
Yeah.
So I wrote his appeal. He was totally guilty. He wasn't going to get out, but everybody writes an appeal. So he told all the other Mexicans that I wrote his appeal and that I didn't charge him anything. It never even occurred to me to charge him anything. The currency in prison is bags of mackerel, right?
Mackerel?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like one of these silver foil bags of mackerel. You see the tuna in the grocery store, like a bag of tuna?
Yeah.
Yeah, but mackerel costs $1 at the commissary. So everything is you buy things.
I can't believe, I'm surprised they actually have mackerel.
Yeah, it's disgusting. It smells just to high heaven. Yeah. But anyway, so the Mexicans left me alone. And then finally, and this sort of set the tone for the rest of my time in prison. My brother called me right before I left for prison, and he said, "Listen, you're going to FCI Loretto. I got to tell you." He goes, "There's a guy there that you really need to stay away from. His name is, I'm not going to say his name. He's the boss of the Gambino family, right? And the Gambinos, they're one of the 5 families. This guy was in on 18 murder charges, right? He's the one who replaced John Gotti when Gotti was pinched. So he's like, stay away from him. He's a very bad, dangerous guy." Well, when I got there, I would see him walking around the yard. He was tiny. He was like 5'4", but surrounded by these gigantic bodyguards, like a half a dozen of them. So I'm sitting in my cell one day. I'm reading the newspaper, and I see movement out of the corner of my eye. So I turn, and look, and it's one of the bodyguards. We used to call him Stupid Tony because his eyes were crossed. It's awful. So it's Stupid Tony, and he goes, hey.
Was he actually stupid?
Yeah, he was really stupid. Yeah. Guy was going nowhere in life. He goes, hey, the boss wants to see you. And I go, he wants to see me? And he goes, yeah, let's go. Like that. So I jump up thinking, shit. Like, I've avoided this guy for 4 months, and now he's summoning me. So we go all the way to the other side of the prison. We go to his room, and it's full of guys. Hangers-on, wannabes. The guy, the boss, is sitting in a chair. There's another guy on his knees clipping the boss's toenails. Utterly disgusting. And then when he finishes, the boss gets up, brushes his teeth. There's a little sink there. He brushes his teeth, and he spits, and the spit goes all around the sink, right? Well, right behind him, there's a guy sleeping on the top bunk of the bed, and he punches the bed, and he goes, hey, get up. Clean his shit up, he says. The guy says, you got it, boss. He jumps out of bed, cleans up all the spit. Well, I'm standing in the doorway this whole time. So I go, excuse me, did you want to see me? He goes, sit down. So I go and sit down, and I'm like practically shaking. I'm so nervous. And he goes, you the CIA guy? And I said, I am. You write a book? I said, I did. Your book do good? I said, actually, I did very well. I made number 5 on the New York Times bestsellers list. And he goes, you're going to write my book. And I said, oh, is that what this is? Well, what do you have in mind? He goes, I'm going to tell you stories, and you're going to write my book. I said, okay, well, let's think about this for a minute. You know, I said, most of the books of this genre are written by rats. And I said, they spend the first half of the book talking about all the cool things they did. And the second half of the book, they try to justify why they turned rat. And I said, you're definitely not a rat. And you probably shouldn't talk about the cool things you've done. And he looks at me and he nods and he goes, hadn't thought of that. Never mind. But from that day, I was invited to every Italian dinner. They had a crooked guard on payroll. He would bring us pork loin and wine for the marsala sauce and fresh mushrooms and tomatoes and all the pasta we needed from the kitchen. And I gained 30 pounds in prison.
Holy shit.
I gained 30 pounds in prison. And then we actually stayed in touch afterwards.
Is he still in there?
No, he's out, which leads me to another story. I had been out for 3 years, and around 7:30 one evening, my doorbell rings. And my youngest, I have 5 kids, but my youngest was little at the time. He was like 4.
You're a busy guy.
Yeah, I can't keep my hands to myself. So he runs to the door and he opens the door before I can get there. And I hear this sugary, sweet voice. And he goes, hi, is your daddy home? And I thought, you motherfuckers. So I go to the door and I said, may I help you? I was like actively rude, and it's not my nature to be rude. The guy goes, hi, Mr. Kiriakou. I'm Special Agent Smith with the FBI, and this is my colleague, Special Agent Jones. And I said, you guys have balls coming here. You know I'm represented by counsel. And he goes, oh, no, Mr. Kiriakou, it's not about your case. You see, it's about another issue. We know that when you were at Loretto, you were friends with Peter the Rabbit. I said, so? Well, you know, Pete got out. He's home now. I said, yeah, good for Pete. Well, Mr. Kiriakou, we have reason to believe that that Pete's taken over leadership of the Gambino crime family. And I go, and you want me to rat out a 5 family's boss? Get off my property. And I closed the door. I called my attorney. He called me back 20 minutes later, and he's like, I don't know what they were thinking, but they're not going to bother you again.
Jesus Christ, man. That's fucking terrifying. Because even if you don't rat them out, these guys will probably use your name when they're trying to get this guy.
Exactly.
And that not only implicates you, it implicates your whole family.
He called me, I'm going to say it's exactly.
The mob boss guy?
Yeah, the mob boss. He called me 3 years ago and he said, hey, he goes, Anthony's out. Anthony was this guy. He was also a Gambino.
Yeah.
That we really liked. I liked Anthony. He was the last one of our group of friends to be released. And Anthony was also the last one to be transferred to our prison from a maximum security penitentiary to a medium to a low.
Okay.
So I was sitting at the baseball field out in the yard, sitting with him when he first arrived. And poor Anthony, I mean, he was dumb. He was nice, but dumb as a stone. And I said to him, so Anthony, you mind if I ask you how much time you have? He goes, I got 20. I go, 20 years? And he goes, yeah, I got a long one. I said, oh man, I'm sorry to hear that. You mind if I ask you, what did you do? And he goes, my crime was organized in nature. I said, right, I got it. He goes, yeah, my victim found himself on fire. I said, right, yeah,
Oh my
20
God.
years.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. And he's out now.
He's out now.
So is it part of like a conspiracy case or
Yeah.
a RICO case?
Yeah, they were all of them in on RICO cases. All of them.
Oh my God.
Yeah, RICO's real.
That shit's crazy. How
So
those guys
Anthony
can get
got out, and the boss called me and he's like, "Hey, we're all getting together in Atlantic City, all expenses paid." I said, "Cool."
You went?
I went. We had a great time. FBI's there with their cameras. Click, 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 click. They're all giving him the finger and stuff.
Really?
Yeah, it was
my
ridiculous.
God.
And then, I wanted to I'd never been to Atlantic City before, even though it's 2 hours away from my house. I'd never been. And I've always heard just terrible things about it. So I wanted to go out and explore a little bit. So we all pile into these cars and they're like, "No, we're going to go. You got a GPS. Put this address in your GPS." I said, "Okay." I put it in. We go. It's some rundown, beat up house. I said, "What is this supposed to be?" "This is Anthony Scarfo's house. He was the boss." "Okay. So what the fuck are we doing here?" "We're going to pay respects." I said, "You guys are like the most boring travel companions in the world. I want to go to
What
the
were they
casino."
going to do to pay respects?
They're just sitting out there oogling at it.
That's so weird, man. I've had a couple, people who went to prison under RICO charges,
Oh, it's bad.
being involved with the Gambino crime family and different Italian, mafia groups. And one thing that's consistent that they all say to me is that there's this culture of being like of anti-rat culture. Like you can't be a rat.
Yeah. And they're all rats.
They're all rats.
They're all rats. All of them. It was crazy. I'll tell you another thing that was odd. It's all about honor and respect, right? So on the one hand, we're all standing in one of their cells one day. We had dinner, right? Everybody's sitting around with these giant bowls, heaping bowls of pasta. And one of the low-level guys walks in, and he's got, his arms are full of candy bars. So he starts handing out these candy bars, Hershey's bars and Snickers bars. And the boss says, "Where the fuck did you get this?" And he said, "I broke into a Chomo's locker, and I took all of his shit." And the boss gets up, he goes, "You put all this shit back, and you tell him you're sorry." And everybody stops and looks. And the guy goes, "But he's a Chomo. They're the lowest of the low." Right? He goes, "If you're going to shake down to a Chomo, you do it to his face. And you say, 'Chomo, open your locker and give me all your shit.' You don't do it behind his back.
Right.
Now give him all his shit back." And he did.
So after you did 24 months in prison, what was it like getting out of prison?
Oh, getting out was much more stressful than anybody will tell you. Home confinement, house arrest, is far worse than prison. I'd rather have just stayed in prison, because with home confinement, you literally cannot leave the four walls of your house. If you step outside on the front stoop or on the back porch, you're violated, you go back to prison again. And so you go stir crazy. You can't do anything. And they've got these restrictions on you. They call you 24 hours a day to make sure that you're there. You haven't run off, or you didn't go out partying or whatever. Constant drug tests. I'm like, you guys, I've never even smoked weed in my life. I'm happy to waste as much as of your time and the government's money as possible. But this kind of pisses me off now.
Yeah, isn't that so stupid that a lot of people who get arrested and go to prison for non-drug related charges, they get
it's all about drug testing. Ridiculous. So it's far more stressful coming out of prison. See, you think you can step back into your life again, and you can't. That's just not possible. It'll never be possible. Your life will never be the same. I'm never going to work for the government again. And, after I left the CIA, I was the chief investigator on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, the highest profile, most prestigious committee on all of Capitol Hill. I'm never going to do work like that again. Never. So
they stripped you of your retirement?
My pension. Yeah, they took my pension. I'm going to have to work till the day I die. Unless I get a presidential pardon, which is unlikely.
Now, are you still being shackled down hard by these restrictions?
No. In fact, I was supposed to have 3 years of restrictions after I got home, and they lifted them after 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's nice. They definitely don't make it easy when you get out to get back on your feet and get a job.
Oh, no. In fact, I had an offer to be a senior fellow at a think tank in Washington, the Institute for Policy Studies. It's the oldest progressive think tank in Washington. And they wanted me to do prison reform and sentencing reform issues. And the Bureau of Prisons denied me. They denied me permission to take the job. And I said, listen, you guys are up my ass about getting a job. I finally get a good job, and you tell me that I can't do it. They said, it would be inappropriate for you to comment on prison reform issues. And I said, you know what?
Wow.
I'm going to take the job. And if you violate me, I'll let you talk to the Washington Post about why you violated me. And I took the job, and they backed off.
No shit.
I got into 2 incidents with them. One was on that job, and those people treated me like a king at the Institute for Policy Studies. The other thing was they make you take these classes, mandatory classes. If you don't take the class, you go back to prison. Okay, mandatory how to write a resume. I know how to write a resume. How to balance a checkbook. Thank you. I know how to balance a checkbook. Suicide prevention. I go, don't you think you should give that before you go to prison instead of when you get home? So it was all these stupid, how to kick your drug and alcohol habit. I don't have a drug and alcohol habit. So I never signed up for any of these classes. I get a call from them one day. They said, Kiriakou, get in here immediately. So they wouldn't let me drive. So I had to walk to the metro, which was, 20 minutes. Then I have to take the metro to Capitol Hill. Then I have to get on a bus, and then take the bus to Alabama Avenue, and then take another bus to the halfway house, and then walk 3 more blocks through the most dangerous block in the most dangerous neighborhood in Washington. It took me 2 hours to go 7.5 miles, right? As the crow flies. So I go there, and it's everybody. It's the head of the halfway house, the deputy director, the case manager, a representative from the Bureau of Prisons regional office in Baltimore, right? And they're all around this conference room table. And I go in, I sit down, and one of them says, Kiriakou, we are this close to violating you. You're going to go right back to prison. I go, why? What did I do? He goes, you haven't taken a single one of the mandatory classes. And I'm so proud of my response. I still chuckle when I think about it. I go, in all seriousness, did you ever see that episode of The Simpsons where Homer has to take a parenting class? And he goes to the parenting class, and he's a little bit late. So when he walks in, the instructor's saying, put a garbage can lid on the garbage can, people. I can't stress that enough. Is that what you're going to teach me in your class? To put a garbage can lid on the garbage can, or how to write a resume, or how to balance a checkbook? Because I don't need your classes. He goes, step outside. So I step outside. I'm out there for like 45 minutes. I go back in. He goes, all right, you don't have to take any of the classes. And I said, thank you. And another thing, I want to drive. It took me 2 hours to get here today, 7.5 miles. I said, you guys are on my back all the time about getting a job, and then you make me come here 3 times a week. And it kills 2 hours getting here and 2 hours getting home, and then you can't understand why I don't have a job. So I want my driver's license back, and I want permission to drive. Okay, you can have permission to drive. I said, thank you. And I left. Like, you morons. You know, it's one size fits all for these dopes.
It's so dumb. We have the dumbest freaking criminal justice system. I think we have the most people in prison per capita than any other country.
By far. We have 4% of the world's population and 25% of the world's prison population. Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
Now, are you doing a podcast now? Or are you doing you're doing some sort of daily show?
Yeah, I've got a daily radio show.
A radio show. Okay.
Terrestrial show in Washington. It's every day from 12 to 2.
Okay.
And I've got 3 syndicated columns now, one for Consortium News, one for Covert Action Magazine, and one for the Sheer Post at the University of Southern California. And then I started something that I'm really pleased with. It's a new social media platform called Panquake. And Panquake is unlike any other social media platform you've ever heard of. First of all, it's utterly, completely transparent. Even the code is transparent. So there are no algorithms. There's nothing that's going to steer you to one line of thought or to another, or to follow this guy or to not follow that guy. Utterly, completely open. It is based in Iceland, so freedom of speech is of the utmost importance. And, frankly, the FBI doesn't have any subpoena authority or seizure authority in Iceland, so that makes it nicer too. It's blockchain-based, and it's completely and totally financed by crowdfunding, small donations, $5,
Wow.
$10, $50. They've repeatedly turned down major money investors.
Really?
Repeatedly, including one who's a household name. And so, it's something I'm proud to be.
Is it similar to Twitter or
Yeah.
Instagram or Twitter? Okay.
Yes. I'm smiling because we try not to say the word Twitter.
Oh, okay.
Just because
It's heresy.
they're our big competition, the big gorilla, 800-pound gorilla.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's Twitter without the algorithms and with transparency.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
very
sounds
cool.
fascinating.
It's panquake.com.
Okay. Yeah. Didn't something happen recently with Consortium
Yes.
News? What happened with them?
Yeah. So PayPal froze Consortium News'
That's
accounts.
what it was. That's what it was.
And not only did they freeze the account, they seized the $9,300 we had in the account on payday, no less. They wouldn't tell us why. And so the executive editor, Joe Loria, was able to get through to a human being at PayPal. He's like, why did you guys do this? Oh, you violated our terms of agreement. He's like, what? What violation? Well, there was no violation. And they finally admitted that there was nobody who complained. They just did this on their own. And finally, they admitted that we weren't anti-Russia enough in our editorials.
You weren't anti-Russia enough.
Can you imagine that?
Who said this?
PayPal.
PayPal.
Yep. So we, all of us who write for Consortium News wrote about this and published in other outlets to try to spread the word as widely as we could. And, I'm on the board of Consortium News. We've got people like Chris Hedges, who's a Pulitzer Prize winner. We have an Academy Award nominated documentary producer. We've got like legit people. These aren't nuts, lunatics, who dabble in QAnon. These are legitimate people respected in their fields. And so we put out the word that not only did freeze the account, but they seized all of our money. And we said, we're going to join this class action suit that's already been filed against PayPal in the Northern District of California. And as soon as we said that we were going to join the class action suit, they released all of our money back to us.
Wow.
But they told us that we're permanently banned from PayPal.
That's so fucking bonkers, man.
It's crazy.
That's so bonkers. You weren't anti-Russian enough.
Yeah. And you know, one of the reasons why I love writing for Consortium News, I actually work for the Russians, right? My show is with the Sputnik network. But one of the things that I insisted when they offered me this job was language in my contract saying that I can talk about any issue that I want to talk about, and I can criticize any person that I want to criticize, including Vladimir Putin. And on the day,
that was your agreement with Sputnik?
With Sputnik.
And for people who don't know, explain what Sputnik is.
Sputnik is the Russian government's official radio network.
Okay.
So it's like Voice of America.
Okay.
For us.
Okay.
So on the day of the Russian invasion, the way I opened my show is I said, I unreservedly condemn the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I believe this is a violation of international law. It's a violation of human rights. And I urge the Russian military to withdraw immediately. That's how I opened the show. And I have guests on that criticize the Russians. I have guests on that criticize the Ukrainians. And when I write, including for Consortium News, I say, I unreservedly oppose the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but I understand why they did it, right? Two different things. Mm-hmm. War is a bad thing, right? Mm-hmm. We should let the diplomats do their jobs and try to prevent war every time that we can. But I understand why the Russians felt they needed to cross the border. That doesn't mean I like it or agree with it. It's just that I understand it.
Right.
And they were like, "Oh no, no, no!"
And
no.
and Sputnik airs all this stuff, even if it goes against the government's narrative.
Yeah.
Because everything that you hear anywhere is that's not what it's like in Russia.
Right.
Everything in Russia is tailored to what the government wants you to hear. It's all propaganda.
CNN did a story about my show a couple of weeks ago, and they said that I was weakening democracy. Can you imagine?
You were weakening democracy in the United States?
Because I'm a former CIA officer. I should be standing up for my country, not working for the Russians. And I said, yeah. I said to this Nick, whatever his name was, the reporter, I said, are you going to put food on my table? Are you going to put my kids through college?
Yeah.
Where was CNN when I got out of prison and I needed a helping hand? So don't tell me about weakening democracy.
Well, that's weird because CNN hires, I think, more ex-Pentagon officials than any other company. They pay.
The last 4 CIA officials are either or CIA directors are at either CNN or MSNBC.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? About all these ex-Pentagon officials, CIA officials?
Scandalous. Where's the separation? You know, it's like CNN and MSNBC and Fox. The same thing. They're all just adjuncts of the national security state. It's crazy.
That's so wild. So fucking wild. Well, man, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but that seems bonkers that's the world we live in.
Yes, it's been a real learning lesson.
And where can people listen to your daily show again?
Almost nowhere. We've been banned from YouTube, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Spotify, and TuneIn.
What?
Yeah.
You've been banned from Spotify?
I'm weakening democracy.
How the frick did you get banned from every single one of these?
Platform. So the only way to listen to it now is at SputnikNews.com. We went from 38,000 daily listeners to 500.
No fucking way.
Yep.
That
Crazy.
is totally fucking wild.
38,000 to 500. Which is what they wanted to do.
My
They don't want anybody who has an alternative viewpoint. Otherwise, democracy might get weakened.
Because what are you saying? What are you saying to weaken democracy? What specifically are they pointing to?
I can tell you. Every Thursday, I have a 30-minute segment called Criminal Injustice. And I have a journalist who focuses on criminal justice issues and a guy who's the head of a group called the Human Rights Defense Center. They publish prison legal news and criminal legal news magazines. And so we talk every week for 30 minutes about crooked judges, crooked prosecutors, the death penalty, cops getting arrested for, raping prisoners and selling drugs and stuff like that.
Wow.
And I get it all out of the Washington Post, the New York Times, but that's weakening democracy.
Holy shit. Well, this episode's definitely going to get banned from YouTube. Oh my God.
You know, a funny thing too is everybody at the station on Twitter, they got this tag that says Russian sponsored media, right? I have 50,000 Twitter followers and I don't have a tag. I don't know why. Knock on wood. I don't want one. I'm not Russian sponsored media.
Explain this tag. This tag is implemented by Twitter?
Yeah.
So Twitter put a flag on these accounts that says it's a Russian.
Every single one of my colleagues, I'm going to show you. Oops.
Maybe he can pull it up on the TV, on the screen.
Sure.
What's one of the colleagues' names?
Lee Stranahan.
Lee Stranahan on Twitter.
Yeah, Lee Stranahan.
Okay. I got to see this.
Yeah.
Because I know that Russia, I know that Twitter implemented tags on posts that are created by automated bots. I had this guy in here the other day who he has a bot that posts.
There it is. Russian state affiliated media.
So he didn't put that on there?
No, sir. Twitter did. About a week after the Russians invaded Ukraine.
Well, click on that. What does that go to?
Oh, I didn't even know you could click on it. Oh,
About government and state-affiliated media account labels on Twitter. Labels on state-affiliated accounts provide additional context about accounts that are controlled by certain official representatives of governments, state-affiliated media entities, and individuals associated with those entities. The label appears on the profile page of a relevant Twitter account. Wow.
Look, and they put the flag. These labels include a small icon of a flag to signal the account status. Oh, man.
That's pretty fucking crazy. I never knew about this.
Terrible.
I never knew about this. Go back to his profile again. Russian state-affiliated media.
With the Russian flag.
Now, did he put... So he didn't put the fucking Russian flag next to his name?
No, Twitter put the Russian flag.
Because, you know, one of the weird things about people on Twitter is, like, I always become suspicious of somebody on Twitter when they have the fucking American flag emoji next to their name.
Right. Right wing.
You think they're some sort of, like, either they're right wing or they're just some sort of fucking antagonist on Twitter.
Yes.
Who's just trying to get attention. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like a provocateur almost.
Agreed. Uh-huh. Agreed.
That's fucking bananas. I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, I don't like
I didn't know that was
bit.
a thing. I wonder what Elon will do about that if he gets Twitter.
Yeah, good question. Good question. Jeez.
And that's another thing about Elon is a lot of his businesses are relying on federal grants and federal money.
A lot. He didn't become the world's richest man by accident.
Right.
The American government.
SpaceX launches all these government military satellites into
Yes.
space. I know that Tesla
Yes.
is super reliant on federal funding.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But I haven't heard anything about that. I mean,
No.
I don't. Not that I don't think it would be a bad thing for Elon to buy Twitter, but it's
Sure.
just an interesting.
I hope he cleans the place up. I really do.
Wow,
Artist.
John, thank you again. Where can people
Thank
follow
you.
you again? Where can people find your books?
The books are all on Amazon.
Okay.
I'm at johnkiriakou.com. Kiriakou, just the way it sounds. Twitter, Facebook, all the usual places.
Awesome. Well, thank you again
Thanks for having
spending
me.
your time and coming down here. I very much appreciate it.
It's a
And I
lot of
really
fun.
enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you.